This edition of MacVoices is supported by the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter to keep you up on all the latest from MacVoices. Watch or listen to MacVoices straight from your email client. Sign up at macvoices.com/newsletter and stay up to date. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this time we got back on the Take Control train with some new updates. We've got a couple of them coming. This time, though, we get to talk to Josh Centers and Adam Engst about their update to Take Control of Preview, might be one of the most used included Apple apps. I don't know. I'll let them tell me.
Pretty much. I mean, well, not compared to Mail or Safari, but yeah.
Well, yeah. So, guys, it's good to have you here. Thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here, Chuck.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's always fun. And I was kind of anxious to hear just what there was to update on Preview, simply because it seems to do so many things. Pre-show, we were talking some things it does really well, some things maybe not quite so much. So how did you guys tackle this new update to the book, and why do we have an update at this point?
Well, I was just checking, and the previous version of the book was written about 2016 when El Capitan was the current version of macOS. And so we've had a couple of versions since then, Sierra, High Sierra, obviously Mojave. And so we hadn't really revisited it. You know, that going through a book like this and updating it is tricky. I mean, it takes time to actually go through and test everything. And nothing was obviously different. It was one of those things where we kind of, we obviously use Preview every day. I don't know. I mean, I assume Josh does, but Preview is my go-to app for everything. And I do a ton of screenshots, a ton of modifying images, reading a ton of PDFs, all that sort of stuff, all in Preview. So Preview is indeed one of my most used apps because I don't use Safari or Mail. But so it was not clear that anything big had changed in Preview. And so with Mojave, actually, the two new features, well, sort of really one new feature that was a big change was continuity camera in Mojave, which allows you to take a photo or with your iPhone and directly send it to an app on your Mac, or scan a document with your iPhone or iPad and send that to your Mac. That's built into Preview. And so that was sort of an obvious change. Like, oh, look, it does continuity camera now. This actually was not a major improvement to Preview, because Preview could already do this. Preview could already, not exactly the same way, but it could already import from digital cameras, including the iPhone and iPad, and it already had the ability to scan documents from a scanner. So continuity camera is useful, but not that different. So that was kind of the impetus, was like, okay, that's changed. Oh, and then the really, really annoying thing, they changed the button you click to get the markup toolbar. Used to be a little toolbox, now it's a little pencil. So, behind the scenes, looking behind the scenes here, we didn't reshoot a lot of screenshots. I just put a new button on a lot of them with Preview. Joe said, I said to Joe, can we do this? And Joe's like, oh yeah, you can Photoshop that on. I'm like, oh no Photoshop here. I'm previewing it on. So that was, like 30 screenshots just needed a different button there, because everything else was the same. It wasn't the point of the screenshot. It just looked slightly old.
And that's the update?
Yeah. That's the update.
Okay, well, glad this was a free update to the 1.1 version, folks.
So no, I mean, we did more than that. So then came the task of actually going through the entire book and testing everything, because that's what you do, right? I mean, you have to make sure that everything you said before still works. You can assume that it does, but in the case of Preview in Mojave, you would unfortunately be wrong. That this is the depressing part of the whole thing, is Preview is still a wonderful app, still use it all the time, no problems. But when you really dive in, there's more bugs than there used to be. The app is simply clumsier, and Apple introduced bugs. There are features that don't work anymore. They took out a couple of features, no great loss in this particular case, but it was sort of too bad, because this Preview is this really, really deep app. And when you go down and start looking at these things, you're like, oh, that doesn't work. Oh, that doesn't work. And it was, Josh was actually, double checking all this stuff in High Sierra too. And some of the stuff doesn't work in High Sierra either. Mm-hmm. So, very troubling, just from a quality standpoint.
Well, okay, so give me some examples of the things that don't work, because that way people will, they need to be aware that they can't depend on them. They need to find alternatives.
So the really, really big one is that Preview has a contact sheet view. And so you can, Command Option 6, and suddenly all the files that you have open appear in the main window as thumbnails. Really quite useful. If you're looking at PDF, for instance, allows you to move pages around really nicely. In Mojave, these always were perfectly normal thumbnails, and they reflected the aspect ratio of the original. So pages were usually landscape. Images were landscape, pages were usually portrait. Images were usually landscape or portrait, and you could see them. Now they're all square. And the aspect ratio is not maintained. So everything looks wrong. Every person now looks like they're in a funhouse mirror if you're looking at photos. Every page looks squashed because they're not portrait anymore. They're now squished into a square. You're like, why would anyone take a perfectly useful feature and make it wrong? Josh, what's the service that does square images?
Instagram, right?
Yeah. All I can assume is they got some 21-year-old who does Instagram, and they decided that everything should be square because square is good, apparently. But then they were stupid enough to actually change the aspect ratio of everything they put in this square frame. So they all look wrong.
They might have had somebody who could do the aspect ratio math and just shrug their shoulders and said, heck with it, we'll square everything.
Well, so let me make sure I'm clear. But this is only visual, so that if you're rearranging things and all, it doesn't change the aspect ratio of
it's not affecting the data.
Right. Okay. Good. Good.
It's just one of those things where it takes. The only reason why it took me a few seconds to figure this out initially was my sample photos are flowers. So with flowers, you don't really notice if they're wrong. But boy, let me tell you open pictures of people and they look really fat or really thin. That's what happens when you squish the aspect ratio of an image. And you open a PDF and it just, in contact sheet view, it just looks wrong. And it worked before. There was no need to do this, right? Why change something that was perfectly functional anyway and make it worse? There's no win there. So, that's actually not a bug in the sense of they must have done it intentionally. So it's a feature. But for bugs, okay, let's see. Here's some bugs. You can add notes to a PDF. So you can annotate a PDF. Used to be that you could edit those notes in the sidebar or in the annotations pane of the inspector. Can't do that anymore. The annotations pane of the inspector is actually completely broken. It actually lists all your notes, and you used to be able to click the column headers to sort them. That doesn't work at all. You select a note, and it has you can an annotation. You can enter a note onto it. There's a button actually saying "click here to enter it." You can't. It doesn't work. There's if you had one that did have content in it, it wouldn't appear. They literally just took, again, a functional feature and broke it. Not that this was a major feature, right? You have to use preview annotations pretty heavily to run into this. But if you do, sorry, you're just hosed. That does not work. Let's see, here's another one. When you let's say you make a note on so you put a little post-it on your PDF, and it's fix this. It's just you're just going to repeat it. Like, every time there's a particular place, you're just going to copy this note and paste it and say, fix this, fix this, fix this. Copy and paste. You lose the text every time. So, what's the point of having copy and paste if you can't do this? And these were things that we had written about as techniques in the previous version. So, it was like, so I'm like, okay, I'll check this. And then I'm like, where'd my text go? Why is it that copy and paste doesn't copy and paste the text of my note? How did they break copy and paste? So stuff like that, just maddening.
Yeah. That is just, it's disappointing because I'm like you, I use Preview all the time. I guess the good news is these are some very specific features that you may not run into, but on the other hand, if you do use them a lot, then it's annoying to say the least.
I will say that, for the most part, these are not hugely troubling. Here's another one. I think this, I'm not sure if this is images too, I have to double check, but it's in certainly PDF pages. You can rotate pages in PDF. So you hit Command R, rotates it. As soon as you rotate it once, a page once, it loses the selection. So you can't hit rotate again to rotate it another 90 degrees. You have to select it again and rotate it, and select it again and rotate it. Again, this worked. Someone had to go in and change code to break this for reasons I cannot possibly imagine.
And that one, now that's one that I think is a lot more common use.
Yeah,
because I know
I've used actually see. Josh, you did the work in the initial version to figure out how like the animated GIF function worked.
Oh yeah,
and so but that was kind of funky before.
Yeah, it never quite worked right, so I wasn't terribly disappointed that to learn that they had removed it. Some of these things that are removed, it's like you said, it's no big loss because they didn't work right in the first place. So you can just tell they were sort of afterthoughts. For instance, and this is one that kind of bothered me in the last version because I remember we spent a lot of time like threading, splitting hairs over how to write about this. Okay, so in the sidebar, let's say you have a PDF open and you have the pages of the PDF as thumbnails in the sidebar. You drag another PDF into that sidebar. What happens? Okay, well, there was a line. There was a magical line that would show up.
Very light gray line.
Yes, and only if you move. If you held your mouth a certain way, and if you dropped the PDF above the line, it would merge the two PDFs. And if you dropped it below the line, it would open the two PDFs in the same window, but with the same sidebar. Now they've changed that, so I think now it just merges them no matter what.
It always merges now. Yeah, we could not figure out how to get the line back. Yeah,
which honestly is probably an improvement, but this is one of those things.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of these things. We've actually covered most of them. But I guess what disappoints me is that Preview is a neat app. That you can do a whole lot of stuff in Preview that people don't realize. So, one of the things like I regularly completely fake screenshots because, for instance, I don't want my email address in them, or I'm writing an article where it's inappropriate to have my name in it. So, Apple uses this font called SF Display and UI Text or something like that. I forget the exact names. You can download them from the developer site. And with those fonts, I can actually, enter text in Preview, match up the exact size and color, and replace the text in a screenshot. It doesn't require Photoshop. It doesn't require anything fancy. It's a built-in function in Preview. You just have to know how to use it. You have to know how to set the background color of your text block, and you have to know how to change the text, size and font and color and all that. But it's brilliant. It's a neat little app for that kind of stuff.
Well, there's so many features. If you're doing image manipulation, as strange as it sounds, Preview can do a lot of things. It can crop, it can resize, it actually can do some color correction. You don't have to go into photos or anything else. And if I remember correctly, at least in prior versions, the algorithms it was using are the same things that you get in photos, just the interface is implemented a little differently.
It's all system level stuff. So, actually in Mojave, the markup tools show up in a lot of places. That's basically preview. Preview's editing tools are the same thing. So, and I could think of, actually, with Josh, we haven't talked about this, but what features would it be nice if Apple had actually put in? One thing I'd love to be able to do is color replacements.
Yeah, color replacement would be great. Layers, like if they had like a proper, and there's they're kind of there already, but if they actually had an interface for layers, if it could save things with layers, that would be awesome.
You know what I was thinking? Because the problem is preview is sort of meant to just look at PNGs and JPEGs and whatnot, which don't have layers, obviously. But here's what I was thinking. What if preview behind the scenes in the versions, macOS versions system, used HEIC? Because that's a container format where it could have, the original ping, the edited ping, and whatever the transformations are to get from A to B. I don't know that that's true, but I believe that's the kind of thing you can do within an HEIC file. And so people don't realize that preview, obviously, let's say you make a change to an image, you add some text to it or whatnot, and then you save and close the image. That text is flattened. It's flattened. It becomes bits in the thing. You can't go in and edit it again. You can't go in and you can't open the file and undo. But because of macOS versions, you can go in and you can say revert to all versions, and you get the time machine-like interface, and you can go back in time until you didn't make the mistake, and then restore that and then redo it. So with that function, with HEIC sort of behind the scenes, if this was in any way possible, you would actually be able to do kind of cool stuff, I would think.
But are you talking about doing stuff that's really beyond the pay grade of preview? I hear what you're saying. It would definitely be cool. There's no question. So, but for my money, it feels like preview already does a lot of things that when I found out it did it, I was shocked and delighted, but shocked.
So yes and no. On the one hand, I'm not suggesting that preview become Photoshop, but on the other hand, there's a lot of things where you think, gee, it would be nice if, and they're little things. They're not big things. Like I said, color swapping. So, you've got this blue and you really want it to be this yellow. Graphic converter can do that really easily. And I'm not suggesting that Apple take over from everything, but there's just a few little features where it'd be nice if. And
something that would be really cool would be if you could actually directly manipulate the canvas like you can in most basic image editors. And Adam, you actually have a really neat hack for doing that in the book. This is one of the better additions to the update.
Yeah, this was a fun one. So you see any kind of graphics program, you have the difference between the image and the canvas behind it, right? And so one of the things, like, what if you want to put stuff on your canvas that's bigger than the image? You can actually, in most programs, expand the canvas so that there's now just white around, or transparency or whatever around the image, and then add stuff like you've had callouts pointing in from the sides or who knows what. And the trick we figured out for preview is, let's say you have a call it 1,000 by 1,000 image, and you select the entire image, you cut it, and that puts it in the clipboard. Then you've got this blank 1,000 by 1,000 image called a canvas, really. There's nothing on it. And you can resize that. And you can resize it however you want, proportionally, non-proportionally, whatever. So you resize it, and then you paste your thing back. Boom. You've just resized your canvas. I'm like, oh, that's so much better. And, it's funny because you don't think of these little tricks because they're not necessary in other programs sometimes, but they are still very, very handy.
Go ahead. Sorry,
I was just going to say we just did a review of Pixelmator Pro. Compare Victor Agreda, formerly of Tua, wrote it for Tidbits recently, and he was comparing Pixelmator Pro to Photoshop. And what he said was, in large part, Pixelmator Pro is just so fast. So if you want to do big, powerful stuff, yeah, you still go to Photoshop. But if you just want to do something quick, he was using Pixelmator Pro. I think Preview is actually the next step down. Pixelmator Pro is really in the middle. Preview is what you launch if you just want to do something super quick, because it launches instantly. Everything is as fast as possible. You're not faced with hardly any features, obviously, in the way that you are. You don't have layers and masks and toolbars and all that. It's just what you see is what you get, and you can make a quick change and get out.
Yeah, if I had to use, I don't use Photoshop. I just use Pixelmator, plain old Pixelmator. But if I had to use Pixelmator for every little image edit I did for Tidbits to Take Control, I probably would have wasted 10,000 hours over the past 3 years just on that alone. I mean, because it takes so long to load those programs up, and then you got to create a new one. You can't just save it. No, you have to export it into a non-proprietary format and blah, 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 blah. Preview, you literally just open it up, do what you need to do, and close it. You don't even have to save it, and it just does it automatically. And, so for quick resizes, for quick crops, things like that, it saves so much time. Because, I mean, it's about as close to instant as an image editor can be.
Yeah, that canvas resizing trick, something I haven't done yet, because I have there's a neat little app called Napkin, which is basically it's meant for editing screenshots, but it's not updated anymore. I don't think it's even for sale anymore. And so I have it. I can keep using it, but at some point it's going to break and go away. What I mostly use Napkin for is composing multiple, images, screenshots that have multiple images on them. So we have some macros that'll do it for like Apple Watch screenshots and iPhone screenshots and whatnot. But if I need to put 2 arbitrarily sized screenshots on one canvas, I use Napkin. But I was just realizing that this canvas resizing trick with Preview would make that equally as possible. And so, again, when Napkin goes away, or for people like, people who can't get Napkin for whatever reason, I think that's going to be, we'll make Preview, again, all the more functional for them.
One feature that I sort of stumbled on by accident, and it's been there for a little while now, but for a long time, I don't think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that Preview can read vector images. It can't manipulate them, but it can open them and let you see what's in them.
Preview can read a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not actually useful to be able to read. It can actually open Word and Excel files. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like, okay, then that's kind of cool, except for we've all got Pages and Numbers for free also.
Right.
But nonetheless, yeah, it's a previewer. So it makes sense that it can do that kind of stuff. And people actually also don't realize, again, graphic converter is the king of the heap, but it can export in something like 20 formats. So you can open something and then save it out in these formats. We actually lost 2 in Mojave. They took out the ASTC and SGI formats. I'm like, I wonder what those were.
Yeah, I remember I was reading that section for the first book. I didn't even know what a lot of the formats Preview supported even were.
Yeah.
I never heard of them.
We had to look them up in Wikipedia. Oh, that's what that is. Neat.
Well, here's the thing to remember about Preview, though. Preview's been around since 1986, 1987, because they originally shipped with Next.
Yeah.
It was originally a Next program, so there's probably some stuff it supports that hasn't existed in anything outside of a literal floppy disk.
and I do think that a lot of people just don't realize how trivially easy and useful it is to use. So, I have a friend who needed to make a course map for a cross-country race. So, he could take a screenshot from Google Maps, but then he needed to draw on it. And he was like, what's the best way to draw? What app do I need? And I was like, just open it in Preview, click open the markup toolbar, and look, there's a tool for drawing and sketching right there. It built in. And so, we do a lot of, you need to send in, you're meeting people, you're posting where you're going to meet people. So you, again, take a screenshot from Google Maps or Apple Maps, and then put an arrow pointing right where you're going to go. Takes seconds.
Preview is definitely a throwback to the days when Apple, especially with the Mac, was focused on empowering users. And Preview is one of those apps that just, it does way more than it really has any right to. And that was what we loved about Apple, because they would give you these kinds of powerful tools just almost as an afterthought. And unfortunately, they still do that to a degree, but I don't know. It's hard to explain that they're like, you get iWork and get all these different things for free, but you don't get quite something as creative and interesting as Preview, where you really just don't expect all that you get with it.
So another thing that Preview, I believe now, is the only way to do. Oh no, actually, I think Mojave took that over. So for a long time, Preview could do screenshots. Again, who knew Preview could take its own screenshots? But what it could do is it could do screenshots with a 10-second delay. So sometimes it is necessary to use Preview to take a screenshot, because you cannot do the action you need to do with the mouse and show something in the user interface unless the screenshot can happen automatically. And that may still be true in Mojave. I can't remember. Let me look. Does Mojave have? No, Mojave does have a timer, so Mojave can do it now too. But until Mojave came out, that was your best way to get some certain screenshots, because the other thing that was true about those screenshots is they included the mouse pointer. And I know we're getting kind of geeky here, but those of us who write about software, sometimes you want to show the mouse pointer. And people don't realize, but one of the things that has been true of the Mac for the last, 5 years, 8 years, I don't know quite what you think, Josh, is the screenshot tools have gotten worse and worse. We used to have things like Snaps Pro.
The third-party ones for sure.
The third-party, that's what I'm saying. The built-in ones have stayed the same until Mojave.
Got better.
Yeah, and they get much better in Mojave. But we used to have really impressive third-party screenshot tools, but Apple kept taking away the kinds of access into the depths of the system that you needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing about screenshotting too, it's not just for tech writers. Anyone who needs technical support, really needs good ways of taking screenshots. And it's interesting too, if you look at culturally, taking screenshots in Android isn't very intuitive. It's almost too intuitive in iOS. It's very easy to make them accidentally.
I'm always I get the Apple Watch ones, I get the iPhones, like, what was that? Oh, I must have taken a screenshot.
But iOS screenshots are almost like a cultural phenomenon in so many ways. Like, for instance, not to touch on my other book a little bit, but Notes, the Notes apology, that's become a thing now. If you have a big apology to the world, like, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry I pushed the button. Wait, no, sorry.
Right. I'm sorry I dressed up like Hitler at the last Halloween party. you write it out in Notes, and then you take a screenshot of it and upload that. That's like the thing you do now. That's like the standard way to apologize for things in 2019. And of course, the screenshots people take of like their iMessage conversations and things like that. So, screenshots have a tremendous cultural cachet that they used to not, and because it used to be, what was it? I can never remember the actual key combinations, even though I do them all the time. It's like Command, Option, Shift, or this is one thing. Windows, right. This is one thing Windows actually has over the Mac somewhat is just you hit print screen. You hit that useless.
Oh, they actually have the custom key.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Of course, it still prints it on a dot matrix printer. So,
right. But screenshots are just incredibly useful in general. And just one thing about Mojave, I have a lot of problems with Mojave, but I'm so glad that Apple is making that more accessible. And for as much as I've bashed the touch bar, both on here and in Tidbits and everywhere else, that is one thing I do like about the touch bar, is that it does make screenshots more accessible, because you can actually see a visual button for that instead of remembering these weird key combinations. So, hey, yay, screenshots. Screenshots are great.
No, I agree with you. It's one of those things that I think once you learn about them, you use them all the time and you don't really think about it. It's just like, and the ability to to capture a particular window or capture just a section of the screen or just the piece that you really need, and without having to necessarily go into something like preview and edit it, but if you need to, then you have that option.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and as a preview makes it possible to take them even directly into preview. Now you don't have to, and again, that was a feature that Mojave brought more into the general awareness through the new Command Shift 5 screenshot capability. But that was there for years in preview, to be able to take a screenshot right into preview, and edit it instantly. So, it's all very cool. The other thing that people actually, I think, often don't quite realize, one of the standard ways to create a new file, with a graphic in preview, you just copy something. You copy any graphical data whatsoever, and then you hit Command N, and you get a new file with the contents of the clipboard. I do this all the time because I'll be cutting something out of another screenshot, or someone sent me something and I want bits of it. It's just brilliant. And you get a new untitled image that you can work with separately without messing with the original.
Yeah, and it took me a while, like you said. It was one of those things I didn't realize, and then it happened, and it's like, what? Okay, how did that get there? What did I do? And then you realize, like, oh heck, I'll do this all the time, all day long.
Yeah.
It's because back to your original or earlier comment, it's so fast to do those things. That's the beauty of it.
Well, I'll give you an example. Like, so one of the bugs that's still in preview, it's been there for years, is that preview has options to open images either in a single window. You have literally only one preview window ever, and everything opens in that single window and shows up in the sidebar, or to open groups of files in a single window. And and the third option, to open every image in a separate window, which is kind of insanity, right? So you can select a couple hundred images, hit Command O in the Finder, and double click them, and it will actually preview. The Finder will say, "Hey, do you want to open 323 images?" And you say, "Okay," and preview will just open them, but it will not honor your setting. If you were saying try to put groups of files into a single window, you'll get 320 in one window and 3 in the next. You're like, seriously? What was different about those 3? And it may be if you're only opening lots, it's not 100%. I actually was testing it on another machine when Josh said he couldn't duplicate it, so I tried a completely separate machine, and I couldn't duplicate it for the first 5 or 10 tries. And then I did something, I don't know what, and then I couldn't not duplicate it. That anytime I opened more than a certain number of files, I don't know what that number was, they would open in 2 windows rather than 1. And it just a little annoying. It's not the end of the world. Usually it's not that big a deal when you are working, but preview really doesn't bog down when you throw 500 images at it. It's perfectly happy to do that. And you can work with them. I mean, you can actually delete images from within preview. So you want to just scan through this folder of images someone sent you and delete the ones you don't want, preview is perfectly happy to do that for you.
Yeah. See, that's why I've. It seems like a simple update, but if you think preview, but if it's any of these tricks are new to you, there are probably at least 2 or 3 dozen others that you guys have covered.
Yeah,
it's such
anyone who's got the book already, you're not going to learn anything new, or not much new. I mean, there's a few new tips and things like that, sure.
Unless you haven't read it, which now would be a great time to pick it up.
Yeah, but if you haven't read it yet, you don't have the book, I can guarantee there will be a lot of stuff you don't know that preview can do, because it's it's a deep app, and the fact that it works with both images and PDFs, that's the other thing, is people don't. I mean, we don't really think about it, but it just because it's just always there, right? You double click file, preview opens. Okay, sure, but there's a fair number of useful PDF options too, like being able to import your signature and then attach that, put that on a government form or whatever. and so that's actually a kind of clever little feature. I'm always sort of impressed when that when that works. And it's only failed once.
And we are in texting.
I've only gotten yelled at once for it. When I took my son to get his driver's test, to get a license, I printed out some form they needed to sign, and I put my I put my signature on in preview, and the woman took one look at it and said, "This is you printed this signature. I need you to sign this again in blue pen." And I'm like, "Whoa! I have never had anyone question that signature before. Only time."
Wow.
Leave it to the bureaucrats.
What, Josh?
Leave it to the bureaucrats.
Yeah. Either that, or man, people are really trying to mess with the driver's test. So that's the other possibility.
I used to do sales tax returns, and I had to sign all of them with a blue pen. That was a stipulation.
Yeah.
Couldn't use black ink. Had to be blue.
Well, just change your signature to blue, and they'll never know the difference.
Yeah.
Right.
But Adam, I'm thinking something you taught me here is if I could drag an Excel file over and then PDF it from there, as opposed to having to open it in Excel or open it in Pages and do the export. I mean, that's one more time, it's fast.
Can you do that? Let me see. Because the question is not so, it'll open it, but I'm not sure what you can do with it once you've opened it. And let's take a look, because it's easy to find an XLS file.
This is Adam Engst doing a live demo.
Rag, yes. You can't see this behind the scenes. Okay, it has just opened it. And then I'm going to, export as PDF.
There you go.
And save it to the desktop. Yes, you can use PDF as the thing. And then I have... not the best, sorry. It did do it, but let me try a different PDF. This particular PDF had a fair number of like colors and things, and it did not do a very good job of keeping those in the exported PDF.
Yeah, but it's a spreadsheet, Adam. Who needs covers in a spreadsheet?
Yeah. Spoken like a number cruncher.
Yeah. Just somebody that uses only for number crunching.
Yeah. No, okay. Yeah, if it's not a heavily formatted spreadsheet, it prints or it's PDFs. The PDF's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's actually if you just need to turn something into a PDF, that would work fine. And I had never even thought about that.
Right. Well, and just like you said, everything. If anything you can get, maybe I shouldn't say that. Just about anything you can get into Preview, you can export back out as a PDF.
Yeah.
And so right there, that's unbelievably useful.
And one of the things that we put this in the original version of the book. Now, didn't have to change it for the update. You can open images in PDF, of course, or in Preview, of course. You can open a bunch of images, and then you can actually export multiple files into a single PDF. So you can make, in essence, a catalog of the images. And let's say you need to send, 30 images to someone, and it's not important that they get the original images. They just need to see them. This lets you send one file, which is way better than sending them 30 images and then having to sort through 30 images on their side. So you just make that little PDF book of them, and it works perfectly.
And it's probably more space efficient for sending by email.
It's probably, I think it's pretty similar. There's ways of reducing file size in Preview, but they don't necessarily do very good things to the actual files.
Yeah,
the images tend to get a little sketchy looking.
Yeah, but again, depending on your need.
Right. If it's literally just you want A or B and quality isn't the differentiator, then you can take it down from being 40 megabytes or 50 megabytes, something that's too hard to send via email, to 3 or 4 megabytes pretty easily with one of these reduced file size things.
And that's something, just as an aside, that we all need to teach ourselves, that you don't have to export the very top quality version of anything. Especially if you're having that challenge, Depends on your purpose. And if it's the finished product, you would probably want to find another method of delivery. But I just had that recently with an exported Keynote file where, okay, I exported it best because that's what I always do. And it had a terrible time. And so just dial it down a little bit for review purposes. And suddenly, like you said, 50 megs go to 3. Okay, well, this is easy now. and you don't lose that much. I wouldn't want to do that presentation with that file, but certainly for working or proofing, it's just fine.
Yeah.
So this is version 1.1 of the book, and so that means it's free to existing owners.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're new to this and you're intrigued by all this, what is the pricing on this?
Josh, do you remember? I was just like, I don't know.
$2.99, right?
I assume it's a $15 book, but let me know.
Yeah.
You guys just write. You don't price.
Well, it's not so much that. It's that we don't buy it.
Okay.
Right. I don't think I see the prices.
15. Yeah, it's 15.
Okay. Very good.
So it's actually a pretty long book. It's again, going through all these features, and there's a lot of screenshots, right? Because the whole point is this is a visual program. We need to actually show what it's doing. So it's the book isn't quite finished, final produced yet, but it's somewhere in the 175 to 180 page range. So there's a lot of cool stuff here in terms of editing stuff and selecting and cropping and resizing and rotating and all that just goes on and on, because it's hard, but because there's so many things you can do. And so like you're talking about pointing stuff out with arrows. You can have an arrow pointing at something, but Preview also has two shapes, in essence, called mask and loop. And the mask basically creates a rectangle that's normal, and everything outside of it is kind of, opaque and sort of grayed out. And then loop actually puts a circle around something, and it blows up whatever's inside the circle. And you can control how, you can control the size of the circle, you control how much it blows up, all that kind of stuff. So for actually, pointing something out, it's a really neat little feature.
If you work with images or documents on your Mac, the book's worth every penny. We won't waste your time or your money.
Yeah, and that's well said, Josh. I mean, that's just it. How many features have we mentioned here? Just, kind of off the cuff. And there were a couple there you mentioned that I didn't know about. I don't think I knew about the loop feature. That's interesting. I'm going to go find that.
Yep. And again, and what's very cool about it is that it's a magnifying glass. It's actually magnifying what's on the screen. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
If you were taking a screenshot of something you want to show a friend and you want to emphasize that one part and just throw a loop on it and zoom in.
Or sometimes, Apple's got such tiny little interface features these days. There are times when you're like, I could put a little box around it, but that's so small. The loop is a better thing because it actually expands the icon, that you're pointing at so that you can actually see it as well as know where it is in the interface.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't even use loops as much as we probably should. As I'm talking about this, like, oh yeah, we did that was it the touch bar
thing?
The touch bar, and we're like, it's this tiny little icon.
Well, while we were talking about that, I literally just brought that article up because I was like, should we replace it with a loop instead? I don't know.
So let's see. We've had a live demo here. We're doing live editing of articles. So and so that just tells you how powerful.
And it's got speech bubbles. What's better than getting speech bubbles on stuff?
Yeah, it's very.
And it's used for Comic Sans.
Yeah. Although even Comic Sans isn't even the best font to use for that.
All right, so takecontrolbooks.com is where you go and get it. It's $15 if you're not a previous owner. If you are a previous owner, it's free. But again, this is one of my favorite apps. It's one of my most used apps. I don't even realize sometimes that I'm using it. It's just, okay, put it in preview and do its thing. So go get it. Josh, Adam, good to see you. Thank you so much for the time. It's always fun.
You're
Thanks
very
for having us on.
Yes. Chickens. That's just for us, folks. That's just for us. Oh, man. So we'll see you next time.
Indeed.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Again, take control of Preview. This is a book you're going to get an amazing amount of value out of because it's going to do so many things that you didn't know that you could do, because I just learned it for you myself. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. I like that. Killer chickens. I've never heard this.
Yeah, you do not want to I mean, like that whole 6-foot Hoboken chicken, the chicken Hoboken thing. Be glad that wasn't real.
What?
Yeah, goats have this reputation. Goats have a reputation for eating anything, but they're actually very particular eaters. Chickens, however, will eat just about anything. Meat, vegetable, grass, whatever you throw into them. Their own eggs, each other,
Yeah, although I have seen goats, eat shingles. So
yeah,
they're not that. It's the Hoboken chicken emergency, Chuck.
What is the Hoboken chicken emergency?
It's a children's book from 1977.
Oh.
Clearly
well,
you have to.
I was not a child in
The main character, Arthur, is asked to pick up a bird for Thanksgiving dinner, so he brings home a 266-pound chicken named Henrietta. The family welcomes her with open arms, but the neighbors are not so sure. Everyone in town is horrified after Henrietta escapes. And it was made into a TV movie in 1984. This is like my childhood.
Okay, wow.
I actually didn't. I did. Oh, it's by Daniel Pinkwater. Fascinating. He's real. But we did have did we have a Jersey Giant? I can't remember. Yeah.
Is that the one at the end they give up and make meatloaf? I think.
I can't remember. It was a long time ago. I don't know if we had a Jersey Giant. Nah. We had some really big chickens. So we had these 2 chickens. We named them Mutt and Jeff. And they were huge. They were a meat variety of chickens. And I swear what these 2 chickens did is they would go and let them out of the chicken house in the morning, and they would walk over to, we had a kind of a pail where the chicken food was. They would walk over to the pail, sit down, and eat. Like for the rest of the day. I mean, they ate constantly. They got no exercise. It was not surprising these chickens put on a lot of weight fast. It was definitely a meet the meat kind of situation with those chickens.
Yeah, that's what some of those meat chickens are bred for. I mean, they're basically bred to eat and to stay tender.
Yeah.
So by my calculation, we're about 12 minutes in, and I've got like 45 outtakes here that I could use.
This is actually the whole episode. Sorry, Joe. We didn't get right to the preview book.